The alarm bells rang through the bridge of the UES Defiant like the sound of death itself. Commander Jake Morrison rubbed his tired eyes and looked at the communication console. The red lights flashed in a pattern he had never seen before in his 15 years of service. "Sir, we have an incoming transmission," said Lieutenant Bobby Chen from the communications station. His voice shook slightly. "It's not from any human ship or station. The signal is coming from outside our solar system." Jake stood up from his captain's chair and walked over to Bobby's station. The young officer had only been on the ship for 6 months, but he was good at his job. If Bobby said the signal was alien, then it was alien. "Put it on the main screen," Jake ordered. The view screen flickered to life. What appeared was not what Jake had expected. The alien looked almost human, but wrong in ways that made his skin crawl. Its head was too long, its eyes too large, and its skin had a blue tint that reminded Jake of a corpse. When it spoke, its voice came through the universal translator in perfect English. "I am Commander Zephyr of the Zephyrian Collective. You are the species known as humans. We have been watching your expansion beyond your home system. This expansion must stop immediately." Jake felt his heart rate increase. First contact with an alien species was supposed to be handled by diplomats and scientists, not a military commander on a patrol ship. But here he was, face to face with something that could change human history forever. "This is Commander Jake Morrison of the United Earth Space Force. We are peaceful explorers seeking to understand the universe and find new homes for our people." The alien's expression did not change. "Your intentions are irrelevant. Your expansion threatens the stability of this sector. We have dealt with 17 other species that made similar claims. The pattern is always the same. First exploration, then colonization, then aggressive expansion, then war. We are not like other species," Jake said, trying to keep his voice steady. "We seek cooperation, not conquest. All species say this. All species lie." The alien leaned forward, and Jake could see what looked like gills on the sides of its neck. "You have established colonies on 12 worlds beyond your home system. You have mining operations on 47 asteroids. You have built space stations in 6 different star systems. This expansion will cease immediately." Jake looked around his bridge. His crew was listening to every word. These were good people who had families back on Earth and on the colony worlds. Many of them had been born on those worlds. How could he tell them that everything they had built might have to be abandoned? "What exactly are you demanding?" Jake asked. "All human presence beyond your home solar system must be removed within 72 hours. All colonies must be evacuated. All mining operations must be shut down. All space stations must be abandoned. You will retreat to your home system and remain there permanently." The bridge fell silent except for the quiet hum of the ship's engines. Jake had been in combat before. He had seen friends die in battles against pirates and rebels. But this was different. This was not about winning or losing a fight. This was about the survival of human civilization. "And if we refuse?" Jake asked, though he already knew the answer would not be good. "Then you will be eliminated. We have done this 17 times before. 16 species chose to comply and were allowed to live in their home systems under our protection. 1 species chose to resist." The alien paused for a moment. "That species no longer exists." Jake felt cold despite the warm air on the bridge. "You're talking about genocide. We are talking about pest control. Species that cannot control their expansion become a threat to all life in the galaxy. We prevent this threat before it can grow too large." "We need time to consider your demands," Jake said. "You have 72 hours. We will monitor all your communications. Any attempt to prepare military resistance will result in immediate action. Any attempt to warn your colonies will result in immediate action. You will simply evacuate and retreat, or you will die." The transmission ended, leaving the bridge in darkness except for the emergency lighting. Jake stood in the quiet. For a long moment, thinking about what had just happened. Somewhere out there was an alien fleet powerful enough to destroy entire civilizations, and they had just given humanity 3 days to give up everything they had built among the stars. Bobby, send a message to Earth Command. Priority Alpha. Tell them we have a situation that requires immediate attention from the highest levels of government. Yes, sir, Bobby replied, his fingers flying over his console. Jake walked back to his chair and sat down heavily. He thought about his daughter Sarah, who lived on New Eden with her husband and 2 children. He thought about the millions of people who called the colony worlds home. These were not just military outposts or mining camps. These were real communities with schools and hospitals and farms. People had been born there. They had built lives there. Dr. Lisa Carter entered the bridge from the science lab. She was the ship's xenobiologist, a small woman with gray hair and intelligent eyes. Jake had requested her presence as soon as the alien transmission ended. I reviewed the entire conversation, she said without waiting to be asked. The alien's body language and speech patterns suggest it was telling the truth about having done this before. The way it described the elimination of species was matter of fact, like someone describing routine maintenance. What do you think about their technology? Jake asked. Based on the transmission quality and the fact that they can monitor our communications from outside our solar system, they are significantly more advanced than we are. If they have eliminated entire civilizations before, we have to assume they have the military power to back up their threats. Jake nodded. He had suspected as much, but hearing it confirmed made the situation feel even more hopeless. Sir, called Lieutenant Mary Torres from the sensor station. I'm detecting movement at the edge of our solar system, multiple large objects approaching at high speed. How large? Jake asked. Each object is approximately 2 kilometers long. I count at least 50 of them, possibly more. They're still too far away for detailed scans, but they're definitely artificial. Jake felt his stomach drop. The aliens were not waiting for humanity's answer. They were already positioning themselves for an attack. In 3 days, those ships would be close enough to strike at Earth itself. Lisa, Jake said quietly, in your professional opinion, do we have any chance at all if this becomes a fight? The scientist was quiet for a moment, considering her words carefully. Based on what I've observed, a conventional military response would likely fail. But humans have something that the aliens may not understand. What's that? We don't give up. Every other species they encountered apparently chose survival over freedom. They surrendered when faced with superior force. But humans have a history of fighting impossible odds when our backs are against the wall. Jake looked at the view screen, which now showed the stars of space. Somewhere out there among those stars were human families living their lives, not knowing that their entire civilization was under threat. In 72 hours, they would either be refugees fleeing their homes or casualties of a war they never asked for. But Dr. Carter was right about one thing. Humans did not give up easily, and if the aliens wanted a fight, humanity would give them one they would never forget. The first alien ships reached Kepler Station at exactly 800 hours, ship time. Commander Zephyr led the advance force of 50 vessels, expecting to find a lightly defended mining facility that would surrender after a brief show of force. Instead, the mining station opened fire with weapons that should not have existed. The mass driver launched its first projectile at 17% of light speed. The container-sized chunk of processed iron struck the lead alien ship before. Its shields could adjust to the unexpected threat. The impact tore through the vessel's hull like paper, causing a chain reaction that destroyed 2 nearby ships. "What was that?" Zephyr demanded of his tactical officer. "Unknown, Commander. The mining station appears to have military-grade kinetic weapons. Our sensors did not detect them during our initial scan." Zephyr studied the tactical display with growing confusion. The humans were supposed to be a young species with limited military technology. Mining stations were civilian facilities. They should not have weapons capable of destroying warships. Return fire. Eliminate the station's weapons. The alien ships unleashed their plasma cannons, expecting to quickly silence the human defenses. But the mass driver was built into the asteroid itself, protected by kilometers of solid rock. The plasma bursts carved deep gouges in the surface but failed to reach the weapon system. From hidden positions throughout the asteroid field, human ships began their attack. These were not military vessels. They were cargo haulers and mining ships, converted for combat in ways the aliens had never seen before. The UES Merchant Prince, originally designed to carry grain shipments, rammed an alien destroyer while broadcasting a message on all frequencies. For New Eden. Captain Steve Morgan commanded one of the mining ships. His vessel, the Rockhound, had been fitted with explosives and programmed for a collision course with the alien command ship. As warning alarms filled his bridge, Steve spoke calmly to his crew. "Gentlemen, we knew this was a one-way trip when we volunteered. Our families are depending on us to stop these things here. Don't let them down." The Rockhound struck the alien command ship at full speed. The explosion was visible from Mars. On his flagship, Zephyr watched his tactical display with growing alarm. In the first hour of battle, he had lost 18 ships to an enemy that should have been helpless. The humans were using tactics that made no sense. They were sacrificing valuable vessels to destroy single alien ships. They were turning their own infrastructure into weapons. They were fighting like they had nothing to lose. "Commander," his communication officer reported, "I'm intercepting human transmissions. They're not trying to escape. They're coordinating their attacks." "What are they saying?" "Most of it appears to be tactical information, but there are also personal messages. Families saying goodbye to each other, workers volunteering for suicide missions. They seem to think this battle is more important than their individual survival." Zephyr felt something he had not experienced in many years: uncertainty. In his long career, he had overseen the conquest of 6 different species. All of them had followed predictable patterns. They fought briefly to show courage, then surrendered when the cost became too high. No species had ever intentionally destroyed their own assets to deny them to the enemy. The battle continued for 6 hours. The aliens had superior weapons and shields, but the humans had the advantage of fighting on their own ground. Every asteroid had been prepared as a fortress. Every mining ship had been converted into a weapon. Even the cargo containers floating in space had been rigged with explosives. Dr. Nina Rodriguez monitored the battle from her laboratory on Earth, analyzing every piece of data that came through. Her computers processed the alien communication intercepts, looking for patterns and weaknesses. "I'm seeing something interesting," she reported to Admiral Parker. "The alien ships are pulling back after taking damage instead of pressing their attacks. They're trying to minimize their losses." "What does that mean?" Parker asked over the communication link. "It means they're thinking like accountants, not warriors. They calculate the cost of each engagement and withdraw when the price gets too high. They've never fought an enemy that doesn't care about cost." Lieutenant Sam Walsh had been monitoring alien communications for the entire battle. His translation software was getting better at understanding their language, and what he was hearing surprised him. "Admiral, the aliens are arguing among themselves. The field commander wants to continue the attack, but his superiors are questioning the casualties. They're saying the humans are malfunctioning and asking for guidance." "Malfunctioning?" Parker asked. "That's the closest translation I can get. They seem to think we're not responding normally to their attacks. They expected us to surrender, after losing 10 or 15 ships. Instead, we've lost 40 ships and we're still fighting." The aliens pulled back to regroup, giving the human defenders time to assess their situation. Commander Lisa Green had survived the initial assault, but her ship was badly damaged. Half her crew was dead or wounded, but they were still at their stations, still fighting. "Status report," she asked her tactical officer. "We've destroyed 31 alien ships, ma'am, but we've lost most of our own fleet. Kepler Station is still operational, But they're running low on projectiles for the mass driver. Lisa nodded. The plan had worked better than anyone had dared hope, but it was far from over. The aliens still had more than 200 ships, and they were learning to adapt to human tactics. "Send a message to all remaining ships," she ordered. "Prepare for Phase 2. Phase 2 was the part of the plan that no one had wanted to discuss openly. With the outer defenses broken, the surviving human ships would retreat toward the inner system, drawing the aliens into a running battle through the asteroid belt. Every rock in the belt had been rigged with sensors and weapons. Every orbital facility had been converted into a fortress. The aliens would win, but they would pay a price they had never imagined. On his flagship, Zephyr received new orders from the Zephyrian High Command. The message was brief and ominous. "Resistance exceeds normal parameters. Implement final protocol." Zephyr felt his blood run cold. The final protocol had been used only twice in Zephyrian history, both times against species that had proven impossible to conquer through conventional means. It meant the complete sterilization of the target system using weapons that could crack planets. "Sir," his tactical officer reported, "the humans are broadcasting on all frequencies. It appears to be a message for us." "Put it on the main screen." Shexer, face that appeared, was weathered and determined. Admiral Dan Parker stood on his damaged bridge, surrounded by smoke and emergency lighting. "This is Admiral Parker of the United Earth Space Force. You came here expecting us to surrender like the other species you've conquered. You thought we would choose survival over freedom. You were wrong." Parker paused, looking directly into the camera with eyes that had seen too much death in one day. "We know you have more ships coming. We know you can destroy our colonies and maybe even our home world. But we want you to understand something. Every human you kill will cost you ships and soldiers. Every world you attack will become a battlefield. We will turn every rock in space into a weapon and every civilian into a soldier. You can kill us, but you cannot make us quit." The transmission ended, leaving Zephyr staring at a blank screen. In his 300 years of life, he had never encountered a species like this. The humans were clearly outmatched and facing certain defeat, yet they continued to fight with a determination that bordered on insanity. "Commander," his science officer reported, "our casualty analysis shows that if the humans maintain their current tactics throughout their entire system, we could lose up to 60% of our fleet achieving victory." 60%. Zephyr had never lost more than 10% in any previous conquest. The High Command would not tolerate such losses for a single star system, no matter how strategically important. But the decision was no longer his to make. The sterilization fleet was already on its way, carrying weapons designed to destroy entire worlds. The humans had forced the Zephyrian collective to use tactics they had hoped never to employ again. As the battered human fleet retreated toward Mars, they left behind a field of debris that told the story of the day's battle. Alien ships floated dead in space next to the wreckage of human vessels. But the aliens had learned something important about their new enemy. Humans did not fight to win. They fought to make their enemies pay the highest possible price for victory. And that price was about to get much higher. The battle for Kepler Station was over, but the war for humanity's survival was just beginning. In the cold vacuum of space, the debris of 31 alien ships served as a warning to any species that might underestimate the human will to survive. The aliens called it overkill. Humans called it the minimum acceptable response to a threat against their freedom. And the galaxy was about to learn the difference. The sterilization fleet emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the solar system like a wall of death. 2,000 alien ships, each one capable of cracking a planet's crust, arranged themselves in perfect formation. The largest vessels were 5 kilometers long and carried weapons that could boil away oceans. Commander Zephyr stood on the bridge of the flagship Eternal Judgment, watching the tactical display with mixed feelings. The final protocol was the ultimate expression of Zephyrian military power, but it also represented a failure. They should have been able to conquer humanity without resorting to species extinction. "All vessels report ready, Commander," announced his tactical officer. "We can begin planetary bombardment on your order." "Wait," Zephyr said. "Scan the system first. I want to know what the humans are planning." The deep scans revealed something that defied belief. Instead of hiding behind their planets or fleeing to the outer system, the humans were moving toward the alien fleet. Civilian evacuation ships, their holds packed with nuclear devices, were accelerating directly at the sterilization. "Fleet on suicide courses." "Sir," the tactical officer reported with confusion in his voice. "The human civilian vessels appear to be attacking us. There are over 300 ships incoming. Our sensors detect massive explosive charges aboard each one." Zephyr stared at the display in shock. "They're using their own evacuation ships as weapons?" "Yes, sir. And, sir, there are families aboard those ships. Our biological scanners detect children." For the first time in his long military career, Zephyr felt sick. The humans were not just willing to die for their cause, they were willing to sacrifice their own children rather than surrender. What kind of species chose extinction over submission? Captain Steve Morgan commanded the evacuation ship New Hope. His vessel was supposed to be carrying refugees to safety. Instead, it carried 500 volunteers and enough nuclear weapons to destroy a moon. His own daughter, Katie, sat at the navigation station, her face calm despite the magnitude of what they were about to do. "Dad," she said quietly, "the alien flagship is directly ahead. We're locked on target." Steve looked around his bridge at the volunteers who had chosen to stay behind when the evacuation order was given. These were teachers and farmers and shopkeepers. They were not soldiers, but they understood what needed to be done. "All ships, this is Steve Morgan aboard New Hope. It has been an honor serving with you. See you on the other side." The New Hope struck the alien flagship at 17% of light speed. The nuclear explosion that followed lit up space like a newborn star. The Eternal Judgment, designed to destroy planets, was torn apart by an enemy that should have been helpless. On Earth, Dr. Carol Adams watched the battle through the orbital telescopes with tears streaming down her face. As a xenobiologist, she understood what the aliens were thinking. They had encountered 17 species before humanity. All of them had surrendered when faced with extinction. None of them had turned their own evacuation ships into weapons. "They don't understand us," she said to her assistant. "In their culture, survival is more important than dignity. They cannot process a species that chooses death over slavery." The suicide ships continued their attacks for 6 hours. Each impact cost the aliens a capital ship. Each explosion took hundreds of human lives. The mathematics were terrible but clear. Humanity was trading 1 life for every 10 aliens killed. Meanwhile, on the far side of the solar system, Engineer Tony Brooks was putting the finishing touches on humanity's most desperate gambit. The lunar colonies had been evacuated, their massive underground chambers converted into electromagnetic railguns. The moon itself had become a weapon. Firing. "Solution calculated," reported Dr. Frank Miller from the primary control bunker. "Target is the alien command cluster. Projectile mass is approximately the size of Manhattan." "Do it," ordered General Chris Taylor from his bunker on the lunar far side. The moon shuddered as the railgun fired. A chunk of lunar bedrock the size of a city block accelerated to nearly 20% of light speed. The aliens detected the projectile too late to avoid it. When it struck their formation, 12 ships simply ceased to exist. The Zephyrian response was swift and terrible. Planet-killer weapons opened fire on Luna, turning the moon's surface into molten slag. But the damage was done. The aliens had lost their command ship and most of their senior officers to an attack they had never imagined possible. On Mars, the situation was equally desperate. The planet's orbital defense platforms had been converted into suicide weapons. Each station was rigged to explode when alien ships came within range. The red planet's 2 moons had been hollowed out and filled with nuclear devices. Captain Lisa. Green commanded the last operational defense platform. Her facility, Olympus Station, had been built to coordinate shipping traffic. Now it served as the final obstacle between the alien fleet and Mars itself. "Ma'am," reported Lieutenant Paul Turner from the weapons station, "enemy ships are approaching. We have enough firepower for one massive salvo." "Target their troop transports," Lisa ordered. "If we're going down, we're taking as many of them with us as possible." Olympus Station fired every weapon it had in a single devastating barrage. Missile pods launched their entire payloads. Kinetic cannon fired until their barrels melted. Nuclear mines detonated in carefully calculated patterns. When the ammunition was exhausted, Lisa gave the final order. "All hands, abandon station. Set the reactors to overload." The station's fusion reactors exploded 12 minutes later, creating a brief second sun in the Martian sky. The blast caught 19 alien ships, adding them to the growing list of vessels humanity had destroyed through sheer determination. But the cost was becoming unbearable. Mars fell 6 hours later, its surface bombarded until the atmosphere began to boil away. The asteroid belt became a graveyard of human mining stations and alien warships. Jupiter's moons launched their final attacks before being reduced to glowing rubble. On Earth, President Alex Carter stood in the emergency command bunker deep beneath the Rocky Mountains. The reports coming in were uniformly terrible. Humanity had inflicted unprecedented casualties on the alien fleet, but the outcome was no longer in doubt. Earth had perhaps 12 hours before the orbital bombardment began. "Mr. President," announced Communication Director Helen Roberts, "we're receiving a transmission from the alien fleet. They want to speak with our leadership. Put them through." The face that appeared on the screen was not the original Commander Zephyr. This alien looked older, with scars across its blue skin and eyes that seemed haunted by what it had witnessed. "I am Sub-Commander Theta, current leader of the Zephyrian fleet. I wish to speak with your government." "This is President Carter. What do you want?" "To understand. We have conquered 17 species across this galaxy. All of them surrendered. When faced with extinction, you are losing this battle. Your colonies are destroyed. Your military is broken. Yet you continue to fight. Why?" Carter looked around the bunker at his surviving cabinet members and military advisors. These were the last free leaders of humanity, and they all knew they would be dead within hours. "Because surrender is not survival," Carter said simply. "You may take our lives, but you cannot take our freedom. Every human who dies today dies as a free person. That matters more to us than breathing." The alien was quiet for a long moment. "This does not compute. Freedom without life is meaningless." "Life without freedom is meaningless," Carter replied. "That's the difference between your species and mine. You learn to survive by surrendering. We learn to survive by fighting. You are all going to die." "Yes, probably. But we're going to take as many of you with us as possible. And when other species in this galaxy hear what happened here, they'll know that resistance is possible. You won't be able to use fear alone to control them anymore." The transmission ended abruptly. Sub-Commander Theta stared at the blank screen, trying to process what he had heard. In all of Zephyrian history, no species had ever fought to extinction rather than accept defeat. The concept was literally unthinkable. "Sir," his tactical officer reported, "Earth's orbital defenses are preparing to engage us. They appear to have armed their space elevators with nuclear devices." Theta looked at the tactical display. The humans had turned their own transportation infrastructure into weapons. Even their civilian satellites had been rigged with explosives. They were going to fight until the last human was dead. "Calculate our projected losses if we proceed with planetary bombardment," Theta ordered. The computer's analysis was sobering. If the humans maintained their current level of resistance, the alien fleet would lose another 400 ships destroying Earth. Combined with the losses they had already taken, more than half the sterilization fleet would be destroyed. For the first time in Zephyrian military history, a conquest was costing more than it was worth. Theta opened a communication channel to the Zephyrian High Command. The conversation that followed would change the course of galactic history forever. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of his ship and looked at the screen. The USS Defiance was a good ship with a strong crew, but what he saw on the display made his blood run cold. The dead zone was there in front of them like a black hole in space itself. Ships went into the dead zone, but they never came back out. For 300 years, it had been eating vessels from every race in the galaxy. The big Zephyrian warships went in and vanished. The smart Keth exploration fleets disappeared too. Even the huge Vortan battle cruisers that could destroy planets never returned from that dark place. Lieutenant Amy Barnes worked at her station and called out readings. She was young but good at her job. Her fingers moved fast over the controls as numbers flashed on her screen. "Sir, I am picking up debris fields on long-range sensors," she said. "It looks like pieces from the Galactic Council fleet that went in 2 weeks ago." Morrison nodded but said nothing. That fleet had 47 ships from 12 different alien races. They went into the dead zone to find out what happened to some missing colonies. Not one ship made it back out. The dead zone had grown bigger after eating them. It was now 3 more light years across. Commander Rick Hayes walked over to the captain's chair. He was Morrison's second-in-command and his best friend. They had served together for 10 years on different ships. Hayes had saved Morrison's life twice, and Morrison had done the same for him. "The Council is telling all ships to retreat," Hayes said in a quiet voice. "They want everyone to fall back to the Kepler defense line." "And leave the outer colonies to die?" Morrison asked. He already knew what the answer would be. Better than losing more fleets. The Zephyrians are already pulling their ships back. They think the dead zone is some kind of space monster that eats advanced technology. Morrison stared at the swirling darkness on the main screen. Normal space was black, but you could see stars. The dead zone was different. It seemed to suck up light and energy like a hungry mouth. Ships that got too close reported strange things. Gravity went crazy. Time moved wrong. Radio messages came back from nowhere. The thing scared every alien race in the galaxy. The proud Zephyrians with their crystal ships ran away from it. The wise Keth with their ancient knowledge stayed far back. The tough Vortans who feared nothing else would not go near it. But humans were different. They had something other races did not understand. When everyone else said something was impossible, humans would try it anyway. When others ran away, humans would charge forward. It was probably stupid, but it had worked before. "Barnes." "What? Is our status?" Morrison asked. "All systems are working fine, sir. The new experimental shields are holding steady. Our quantum drive is running at full power." Morrison made his choice. While alien races ran away in fear, humans had always done things differently. They did not give up when things looked bad. They got stubborn and fought harder. "Set course for the dead zone. Full speed ahead." The bridge went quiet. Every person stopped what they were doing and looked at their captain. Hayes stepped closer and spoke in a low voice so only Morrison could hear. "Sir, this could be suicide. We do not know what is in there." "That is exactly why we are going," Morrison said back. "Every other race has tried using big fleets and heavy weapons. Maybe we need to try something different. Something human." Hayes knew that look on his captain's face. Morrison had made up his mind and nothing would change it. That stubborn attitude had gotten them out of trouble before. Maybe it would work again. The crew went back to their jobs. They trusted their captain even when his orders seemed crazy. That was what made human crews special. Other races followed orders because they had to. Humans followed orders because they chose to. Barnes started the engines and the ship moved forward. The dead zone grew larger on the screen as they got closer. It looked like a wound in space itself. Stars disappeared when they got too close to its edges. Light bent in wrong directions around it. Chief Engineer Pete Johnson called from the engine room. His voice came through the comm system with worry in it. "Captain, the quantum drive is starting to act strange. I am seeing readings I have never seen before." "Can you keep us moving?" Morrison asked. "Yes, sir, but I do not know for how long. Whatever that thing is, it does not like our technology. Navigation." Officer Lisa Chen looked up from her station with confusion on her face. She was the best navigator in the fleet, but her instruments were telling her impossible things. "Captain, our position readings are wrong. The computer says we are still at our starting point, but also says we are already inside the dead zone." Morrison gripped his chair as the ship began to shake. Through the windows, he could see stars appearing and disappearing. They moved in patterns that hurt to look at. Space itself seemed to be alive and angry. "Barnes, what do you see on sensors?" "It is like the zone is looking at us, sir. Energy tentacles are touching our hull, but they are not doing damage. It feels like it is trying to figure out what we are." The ship's radio crackled to life. A voice came through the static. It was human and spoke perfect English, but something was wrong with it. It sounded hollow and far away. "Turn back, Defiance. This place eats all who enter. We are all that is left." Morrison looked at his crew. Everyone was staring at the radio speaker. The voice continued. "I was Captain Marcus Webb of the exploration ship Pioneer. That was how long ago? Time has no meaning here. We tried to fight. We tried to run. The zone ate our ship and our crew and our souls. Only echoes remain." The voice faded away, and other voices took its place. Dozens of them speaking different alien languages. All of them told the same story. Ships eaten, crews consumed, whole civilizations ended. "It is a trap," Hayes whispered. "The zone does not just destroy ships. It keeps part of them, uses them to bring others in." But Morrison noticed something his crew missed. The alien voices only spoke of being eaten and destroyed. But the human voices were different. Even in death, they still fought. They warned of danger, but they also gave information. They had not given up even after being consumed. "Barnes, R. You recording all of this?" "Yes, sir. And Captain, I am picking up something else deep in the zone. There is a huge structure in there. It is artificial, but not like anything in our files." Morrison smiled for the first time since seeing the dead zone. Other races had sent their best ships and strongest weapons against this thing. All of them had failed and been eaten. But maybe they had been thinking about it wrong. Maybe what they needed was not the best technology or the biggest guns. Maybe what they needed was the one thing humans were famous for, the willingness to do something stupid and dangerous because it was the right thing to do. "Take us in, Barnes. Let us go see what is waiting for us in there." The USS Defiance moved forward into the darkness. Behind them, the stars of normal space faded away. Ahead of them lay the unknown. But the crew was not afraid. They were human, and humans did not run from monsters. They hunted them. The armistice came 12 hours before Earth's final defense systems would have activated. Sub-Commander Theta's message was broadcast on all human frequencies. "We request immediate ceasefire to discuss terms." The human response was swift and unexpected. Instead of relief, there was suspicion. President Carter's reply was broadcast throughout the solar system. "The only terms we will discuss are your complete withdrawal from human space. We do not negotiate with invaders." The meeting took place aboard the neutral station Harmony Point, hastily constructed in the space between Earth and Mars from the wreckage of both fleets. Ambassador Helen Roberts led the human delegation, accompanied by Admiral Dan Parker and Dr. Frank Miller. The humans looked tired but unbroken, their clothes still bearing the stains of battle. The Zephyrian delegation was led by a figure the humans had never seen before. The being that entered the conference room was ancient even by alien standards. its blue skin marked with ritual scars that spoke of countless battles. When it spoke, its voice carried the weight of centuries. I am the Arbitrator, Supreme Commander of all Zephyrian forces. I have come to understand what you are. We're humans, Helen replied simply. That should be obvious. No, you are something we have never encountered before. We have studied your species for the past 72 hours. Your military tactics, your social structure, your individual psychology. You are a paradox that challenges everything we understand about intelligent life. Admiral Parker leaned forward. Explain. The Arbitrator activated a holographic display showing the battle statistics. In our conquest of 17 species, our average casualty rate was 0.3%. Against you, we have lost 1,247 ships. That represents 62% of our sterilization fleet. Good, Parker said without emotion. You do not understand. We came here to eliminate you because we believed you were a threat to galactic stability. Now we realize the true threat is not your expansion. It is your example. Dr. Miller spoke for the first time. What do you mean? Every species we have conquered accepted the logic of survival. When faced with extinction, they chose life under our rule over death as free beings. You chose differently. You chose to die rather than surrender. This choice is infectious. The Arbitrator paused, seeming to struggle with concepts that had no parallel in Zephyrian culture. 3 of our subject species have already sent us messages demanding their independence. They cite your resistance as proof that freedom is possible. The Keratani hives have begun arming their civilian ships. The Solari communes are converting their industrial facilities into weapons. You have shown them that surrender is not the only option. Helen felt a chill of understanding. You're not here to negotiate our surrender. You're here to surrender to us. We are here to prevent a galactic war that will destroy both our species and many others. Your example has made our old methods of control impossible. We must find a new way to coexist. The conference room fell silent. The humans looked at each other, trying to process what they were hearing. The most powerful military force in the galaxy was asking for terms. What exactly are you proposing? Helen asked. The Arbitrator activated another display, this one showing star charts of known space. A formal alliance between our species. We will withdraw all forces from human space and recognize your sovereign territory. In exchange, you will help us maintain stability in the galaxy through negotiation rather than conquest. And your subject species? Parker asked. Will be offered a choice. They can maintain their current relationship with us, request full independence, or join the new alliance as equal partners. We will not force anyone to remain under our protection. Dr. Miller leaned back in his chair. You're talking about dismantling an empire that has existed for thousands of years. Why? Because the alternative is a war that will consume the galaxy. Your resistance has proven that conquest is no longer sustainable. Other species are already following your example. We can either adapt to this new reality or watch everything we have built collapse in violence. The negotiations continued for 18 hours. The details were complex, but the core agreement was simple. The Zephyrian collective would transform from a conquering empire into a peacekeeping alliance. Humanity would provide military expertise and tactical innovation. Both species would work together to protect smaller civilizations from external threats. The signing ceremony took place aboard the rebuilt Harmony Station 6 months later. President Carter and the Arbitrator stood before representatives from dozens of species, many of whom had gained their freedom as a direct result of humanity's resistance. Today marks the end of an age of conquest and the beginning of an age of cooperation, Carter said to the assembled delegates. We did not fight the Zephyrians to destroy them. We fought them to prove that freedom is worth any price. The Arbitrator's response surprised many who heard it. We came to your system believing we were the teachers and you were the students. We have learned that courage cannot be conquered, only shared. Humanity has taught us that true strength comes not from the ability to destroy, but from the willingness to sacrifice for what you believe. The formal alliance was signed with much ceremony, but the real work began afterward. Admiral Susan Clark commanded the first joint human-Zephyrian patrol fleet, tasked with protecting the trade routes between newly independent worlds. The partnership was awkward at first, with both species struggling to overcome centuries of different military traditions. The humans still make decisions that appear to be tactically unsound, reported Zephyrian Fleet Commander Azure to his superiors. They place individual freedom above operational efficiency. They refuse to abandon wounded comrades even when it compromises mission objectives. And what is the result? Asked his superior. Their crews fight harder than any we have ever seen. They take casualties that would break other units, but they never break themselves. It is admirable. The first test of the alliance came 2 years later, when a previously unknown species called the Devours emerged from the galactic rim. These creatures consumed entire worlds, leaving nothing but dead rock behind. The old Zephyrian military doctrine called for strategic withdrawal and the sacrifice of outer colonies to protect core worlds. The human response was different. Admiral Gary Foster commanded the joint fleet that met the Devourer scout force at the edge of civilized space. His tactics were pure human. Every ship armed with nuclear devices, every engagement designed to inflict maximum casualties on the enemy, every retreat planned to draw the Devourers into carefully prepared kill zones. Admiral, his Zephyrian tactical officer reported, the enemy is withdrawing. They appear to be unwilling to accept the casualty rates we are inflicting. Good, Gary replied. Send a message to all sectors. The galaxy now knows that some things are worth fighting for, no matter the cost. The Devourers never returned to civilized space. Like the Zephyrians before them, they learned that conquering humanity's allies meant fighting humanity itself, and humanity had taught the galaxy a new way to calculate the cost of war. 10 years after the armistice, Ambassador Helen Roberts stood before the Galactic Council, addressing representatives from 847 different species. The chamber was filled with beings who had gained their freedom because humanity had shown them that resistance was possible. We are often asked why humans fought so hard against impossible odds, she said. The answer is simple. We believed that freedom was worth more than life itself. That belief is now shared by billions of beings across the galaxy. She paused, looking out at the vast assembly of free species. The Zephyrians called our tactics overkill. They could not understand why we would sacrifice so much for something they saw as abstract principle. But freedom is not abstract. It is the foundation of everything that makes life worth living. And we will defend it, no matter the cost. The applause that followed came from creatures with claws and tentacles and energy fields, from beings that breathed methane and others that lived in pure energy. But they all understood the same simple truth that humanity had taught the galaxy. Some things are worth fighting for, even when you cannot win, especially when you cannot win. The galaxy was no longer a place where the strong simply conquered the weak. It had become a place where courage mattered more than firepower, where the willingness to sacrifice for principle could overcome any material advantage. And at the center of it all, humanity continued to expand among the stars, carrying with them the simple but revolutionary idea that freedom was worth any price. The aliens had called it overkill. Humans called it the will to survive. The galaxy called it hope.